Today, there will be an unusual video. I'm going to read you excerpts from a very interesting book. The book was sent to me by a kind man from America, for which I thank him very much. The first thing that catches your eye when you pick up this book is an amazing cover. See for yourself. On the cover is a statuesque woman, with a cross in her left hand and an axe in her right, which she had recently cut off the head of a snake. Do you look at this cover and understand how foreigners perceived Russia in the 19th century? Beautiful, orthodox, mysterious, and at the same time very dangerous. Here he is an example of a real political poster. The title of the book is no less interesting than the cover. Russia as it is. The name just lures. Buy and read this book. He wants to know what kind of Russia really is. The book was published in 1854th year in New York. It was written by Count Adam Gorovsky. Adam Gorovsky is a very ambiguous figure. In 1825th year, he considered himself an opponent of the Russian Empire, condemned its participation in the fate of Poland. He took an active part in the November uprising against Russia in 1830. Then he fled to France. His estate was confiscated, and he himself was sentenced to death. In 1835th year, Gorovsky published a work entitled The Truth About Russia, in which he advocated the unification of various branches of the Slavic race. The Russian government liked this book, and Gorovsky was cleared of all charges, and he was accepted into the civil service. But in 1844th year, Gorovsky again has to flee from Russia. First, he goes to Europe, and in 1849th year, he emigrates to the United States. Despite the fact that Gorovsky had to flee Russia, he exerted an effective influence on American public opinion in favor of Russia, until the end of his life. In other words, Adam Gorovsky defended a pro-Russian point of view in his American works. And the American government did not hinder him in this at all. I can't say that everything written in this book is true. This book was released in 1854th year with American money and was written by a pro-Russian Polish count, in whose interests he acted. It is simply impossible to find out today. Something else is interesting in this book. This book was written in the middle of the 19th century. A smart man who studied all the latest historical theories of those years. And reading this book, we seem to be transported back to a time when historical dogmas have not yet fully developed. And there are still those historical versions, of which there is no trace left today. In other words, we will see the historical past through the eyes of an educated person from the 19th century. I'm not going to read the whole book to you, I'll show you only a few interesting points. For those who are interested in the whole book, I will post PDF files in open access on my page in Boost. Anyone can get acquainted with these files there. So, let's start reading. For some time now, Russia has increasingly attracted everyone's attention. This mighty ear towering over Europe and Asia is for many a dark cave filled with demonic forces that, having escaped to freedom, must extinguish the light, absorb civilization, and stop the progressive movement of the European world, spreading all the plagues and invasions of darkness on it. To what extent these concerns are justified and justified, I will try to find out on the following pages. I will try to give an idea of the heart, life, and muscles of this political giant. About Russia and its people, unknown in general, are judged by their external form or government, and therefore mostly by their external manifestation. But not only this side. It is not the deeds and deeds of sovereigns, not battles and the expansion of geographical borders. not concluded treaties and diplomatic tricks that make up exclusively the subjects of history. All of this taken together does not give a true idea of the life living in the nation. Life flowing below, and for the most part, in the direction opposite to the state external form. This undercurrent reveals the true character of the people, its significance in the future destinies of all or part of the human race. From this point of view, these pages talk about Russia. The fate of Europe and the ancient world fluctuates between freedom and absolutism. And Russia is currently turning the scales in favor of the supporters of the past, and against the apostles and admirers of the political and social schism. Thus, in the general course of events that move and shake the world, Russia represents two historical elements: an element of arbitrariness and an element of race. As a race, the Russian people has its own distinctive features that dominate both in its history and in its internal organism. The characteristics are unknown, misunderstood, or misrepresented. The following pages may help shed some light on the issues that are coming to the fore on the world stage. Scientists Denina and Adelung to some extent suggest that perhaps the Slavs formed the aborigines of Europe, from the Atlantic to the Volga. In the most remote and darkest times, these areas were usually called Scythians. But the Scythians, even in the less obscure era of Herodotus and classical times, in the end, did not represent a completely separate race or even a tribe, but rather a confederation of various inhabitants of the North and Europe. Perhaps Slavic, German, Children's, Gothic, or even Celtic origin, as well as various Finns or purely Asian aliens. It still remains a positive and still inexplicable historical fact that when for the first time, history tells about the Slavs and their special and ancestral origin, both along and beyond the Danube. According to Hernandez, Procopius, and other successive Byzantine writers, together with the name of Slavi, mention the name of the ante and the wreath, forming the same family. And even in the Breton dialect there are capital words and the name of Slavic words. And the Slavic influence is very clearly traced back to the centuries and ancient Vindelici. Whatever hypothesis was adopted regarding the Slavic race and its settlement according to the biblical or Indo-European theory, there is no doubt that the Slavs belong to the autochthonous families of Europe. The Slavs occupied more or less the areas that they found then and that they occupy now. Between the Sava, the Drava, the Vistula, the Danube, the Evzina, the northern slopes of the Vidai Hills, and the Volga, there is their primitive and undeniable home. History will never find out how far they extended to the farthest reaches of Western Europe, where in any case they were overlapped and completely absorbed by other races. When the North and the East crashed into the ancient world, when tribes and peoples rolled forward in waves, shifting the old boundaries, and maybe even a few centuries before this exact epoch, there, on the watersheds between the Weser, the Elbe, the Vistula, as well as between the Danube and Savoy, there was a continuous struggle between the heterogeneous German and Slavic populations for the possession of these lands. Whatever the evidence put forward by German writers, the question of which of the two of them, with respect to priority, was the rightful owner of the disputed lands, will forever remain controversial. When the Germans advanced into Italy and Gaul, when the rule of Attila was broken, the Slavs then flooded the almost abandoned lands, especially along the banks of the Elbe as well as further south towards the Adriatic. During the time of Charlemagne, new conflicts began between neighboring races. At the same time, the Magyars of the Ural tribe invaded the Slavic country, ravaging it, as well as southern Germany and even France. Their hereditary cruelty allowed them to better resist this conquest. The chroniclers of that time preserved information. They curbed the ferocity of the Asian conquerors, who eventually settled in Pannonia, on several conquered Slavic tribes. Even to this day, a continuous chain of Slavic population stretches from Bohemia to Qatar. In the north, the protracted struggle ended partly with the extermination of the Slavs, partly with their Germanization through and through. The inhabitants of the real kingdom of Saxony up to Leninburg, and even beyond, were once Slavs. Almost all village names have a Slavic root or ending. All writers and chroniclers of the medieval era, starting with the Gothic Bishop Jornans, speak of the Slavic race as inhabiting vast areas of Europe in a continuous stream. Roger Bacon, this giant of intelligence and scholarship of this era, speak of Slavs, Russians, Muscovites, as extending to the south and to the east, and so on. The Slavic language was spoken by most of the inhabitants of Europe at that time. The ending of many places, mountains and rivers in the ancient Peloponnese, is still Slavic. Recent research by the scientist Fallmeyer proves that this is beyond any doubt. The emperor of Mauritius at the end of the 6th century describes the Slavs as outstanding farmers. German writers admit that the Slavs taught the Germans both agriculture and gardening. In any case, the name of the plow in German has a purely Slavic origin. Okay, I'm going to finish reading this book for today, and here's what I think about what I've read. In the middle of the 19th century, almost no one denied that most of Europe was inhabited by Slavs. It was the Slavs who taught the ancient Germanic tribes agriculture. The moment of mentioning the Magyars is also interesting. It is explicitly stated that this is a fierce Uralian tribe that came from somewhere in the east. And what do we have in the east? Of course, the Ural city, behind which the hunter small people are living out their days. This people used to be called Ostyaks. So, for some reason, the Ostyaks speak a language similar to Hungarian. And if you put it all together, it turns out that a few hundred years ago, the mighty and bloodthirsty Staks almost completely decided to move from Siberia to Europe. Because of their ferocity, they easily captured part of Eastern Europe. They founded their own state. And so Hungary appeared, which is inhabited by Magyars. To be more precise, these are Transural Ostyaks. It seems that the cold snap forced almost all the hosts to move to Eastern Europe. I do not know if you are interested in this book. If it is interesting, then I will continue to read excerpts from it. And those who are interested in reading on their own, the first 100 pages of the book will be found on my Boost in open access. So take it, translate it, study it. That's it. Watch my channel.